Number 10. Iris West is killed by Professor Zoom. That's right, Professor Zoom actually succeeded at one point in killing the love of Barry Allen's life, Iris West. Eobard Thawne, how dare you? And it would only be fixed by a continuity reset basically. Well, and prior to that, Barry Allen basically dipping from his own reality to go live in the future of the 30th century with an alternate future version of Iris who was kinda made to just exist for him having been reborn there, so it's kinda like his Iris but also not, if that makes sense. And if it doesn't, I mean, fair enough, it's pretty confusing. Iris died after Barry and Iris were married, and after she knew about his secret identity. Professor Zoom, as he was known then, ended up simply finding Iris at a party and phasing his hand through her head to kill her instantly. This loss hurt Barry so much that later on, when he found love with Fiona Webb, who he was engaged to marry, when Professor Zoom attacked them on their wedding day, Barry could not take it and responded by killing the villain. It was after this and a following trial for Barry Allen, where he was actually charged with manslaughter because, you know, he killed Thawne, that Barry left the main reality to go be happy with the Iris of the 30th century. Although that would all get wiped away following the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths, but anyways, ain't that just how it goes when crises come a-knockin'. Number 9. Sisterhood of Mutants. In case you were wondering what was going on in the thumbnail from our previous top 10 times superheroes lost list, I'm here to answer that for you now. What's going on there is Lady Mastermind is in essence keeping Emma Frost trapped in kind of like an illusion, so Emma's like trapped in her own mind. Don't worry though, the White Queen's defeat would only be temporary. This was during the creation of the villainous mutant team known as the Sisterhood of Mutants. Yeah, you might know about the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, but did you know there is a sisterhood too? It was led by none other than the Goblin Queen herself, Madeline Pryor, who had a plan for how to deal with everyone as she invaded the X-Men's headquarters. Her plan for Emma was for Lady Mastermind to keep Frost trapped within her own mind by using illusions. This, by the way, is also at a time where Emma Frost is actually one of the good guys, not the bad guys, just to be clear. However, Emma would ultimately fight back against Lady Mastermind and find a way out of this when she surprised Mastermind with her new secondary mutation, her diamond form, which makes her immune to any kind of psionic attack. Emma also kicked butt in her diamond form, landing blows that knocked Lady Mastermind into next week. Yeah, I would not want to be hit by a diamond form Emma Frost. That would hurt a lot. Diamonds are really painful, I'm sure, to be punched with. I mean, I assume a lot of things are, but diamonds especially. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want another list where we talk about the times the superheroes lost, honestly, I didn't think I was going to be able to come up with many of them, but the more I do these lists, the more things come into my mind about all of the times superheroes have lost. So let me know in the comments, and maybe we'll do a part 3. Number 8. Dark Avengers. Sometimes heroes lose, not when villains win against them, but just when villains win in general. That was in essence the case with what happened when it came to the creation of the Dark Avengers. The Dark Avengers were the team of Norman Osborn, who probably just called them, you know, Avengers. No dark implications from his side. That would be pretty suspicious if it's like, hey guys, look at my team, these are the Dark Avengers. Don't worry, they're totally great people and none of them are villains. Don't worry about it. Seems a little suspect. Their editorial name though was definitely the Dark Avengers from a reader's standpoint, so that's how we know them. This team of villains marketed as heroes came to be after Osborn was given the reins to create his own organization after the fall of S.H.I.E.L.D. Why Norman Osborn, formerly known as Major Villain Green Goblin? Because at the time, he was being celebrated as a hero after defeating Queen Veranke, leader of the Skrull secret invasion on live television broadcast. Norman created his own organization known as Hammer, which was an acronym that he just liked. It actually doesn't even stand for anything. He was just like, I like the name Hammer, make that make sense, let's not worry about it. He also created his own evil Avengers team known as the Dark Avengers during a period referred to as Dark Reign. So if you want to go check it out, you can look up Dark Avengers, you can look up Dark Reign, you can read some cool stuff. Number 7. Emperor Doom. In this story, Dr. Doom succeeds in taking over the world by using the powers of the Purple Man, who he keeps as his prisoner. This might sound like a lot to put on Purple Man, aka Zebediah Killgrave, whose powers aren't generally depicted as being capable of working on a global scale. However, Doom manages to boost Purple Man's power while also taking it for himself by trapping him within a large Psychoprism prison. Surprisingly, Earth actually does pretty well under the rule of Doom. Hunger, crime and war are pretty much all eradicated under his rule, but at the high cost, of course, of free will of every individual on the planet. In the end, Doom isn't defeated, but actually chooses to relinquish control, becoming bored of the monotony of ruling without any opposition. Number 6. Tower of Babel. In the Tower of Babel event, Ra's al Ghul manages to use Batman's own intel and files on the Justice League to defeat them. No. Really. Batman, being the prepared and paranoid man that he is, basically is revealed to have kept files on each member of the Justice League, noting their weaknesses and also containing contingency plans for how to best defeat them should they ever turn to the side of evil. Ra's gains access to Batman's systems and is able to retrieve these detailed files and plans via his daughter Talia. He uses this information to take on and defeat all members of the Justice League, even managing to seemingly distract Batman by robbing the graves of his parents. In the end, the Justice League recover and win the day, but they are none too pleased with Batman, whose secret intel in essence almost single-handedly allowed Al Ghul to destroy the whole team. Number 5. Days of Future Past. In the Days of Future Past reality, Sentinels rule over North America. Here, many mutants are eliminated with only a few managing to survive, but still with many of them being kept in camps where they are worked until they die and are branded with an M tattoo on their face, so they will forever be recognized as a lowly mutant, unable to escape prosecution. Even many superheroes have been killed in this reality of Earth 811 because they attempted to protect mutants and put a stop on the Sentinels' reign, which also made them targets. One of the main reasons why the Sentinels are successful in taking over in this story is because of the deaths of Senator Robert Kelly, Professor Charles Xavier, and Moira McTaggart, who were all killed by the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Number 4. Death of the Justice League. The Death of the Justice League has kicked off as of issue 75 of the current Justice League series, which started back in 2018, and wow, it is rough. What happens to the Justice League? Well, they face off against Pariah, who himself is from one of the first worlds to be targeted during the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths. He was cursed with basically watching all these worlds die again and again, unable to stop it, despite being one of the first people to warn everyone that Crisis on Infinite Earths was coming. Now, with the multiverse reset following the events of Death Metal, Pariah claims that he sees the signs of the crisis happening again. Desperate to prevent this, his plan is to wipe the slate clean when it comes to the heroes, so that the possible new Anti-Monitor who will come into existence will have no reason to continue with the crisis. Seems like some flawed logic to me, but this man has also seen some, so I understand his desperation to do whatever he thinks will work when it comes to avoiding another crisis. Number 3. Age of Apocalypse. While the Age of Apocalypse does eventually end, this reality is based on the whole idea of what the world would be like if the big bad villain won, and by big bad villain, we of course mean Apocalypse this time around. Which is precisely what happens here. These events are actually all set into motion by Legion, who accidentally causes the death of his father, Professor X. Legion traveled back in time with a plan to kill Magneto, but Professor X shields Magneto against Legion's attack, dying instead in his place. Apocalypse ends up attempting to take over the world earlier on in his timeline in this universe, the AOA reality of Earth 295. Magneto is the only one who attempts to oppose Apocalypse, and as such, En-Sabah-Nur is mainly successful in his attempt for world domination. Apocalypse would oppress humanity, seeing superpowered beings as superior, and it would be many years before his reign of terror was ended. Number 2. Final Crisis. Which actually apparently wasn't so final, as we have another crisis headed our way now, known as Dark Crisis. But regardless of whether or not it was actually final, Final Crisis was definitely a bad time for Earth. In this story, Darkseid actually succeeds in obtaining and releasing the anti-life equation on Earth. He puts it on the internet where it can be easily seen and then spread. Those who see it basically lose their will to live, becoming enslaved to Darkseid and his will, instead of having their own. Well, in the end, the heroes do manage to break free from the influence of Darkseid and the anti-life equation, defeating Darkseid in the end with a Radion bullet. Darkseid still manages to enslave all of Earth and many of its heroes, for a time being seen as the victor. Number 1. Life 9 of Moira X. Well, this life in the end seemingly gave mutants the information needed to beat the rise of the Sentinels and of AI, it also was a world where they had lost much. If anything, it actually set the stage for the reset of Moira's 10th life, where mutants supposedly won. However, even that victory would be revealed to be more complicated, as Moira's true motives were revealed during the events of the 2021 Inferno series, and it turns out her motives were actually to kinda end mutant kind in a nicer way. Still, just taking this world and this continuity as it is, the mutants here have almost all been exterminated. In this life, Moira joined forces with Apocalypse in an attempt to make a final stand against the all-powerful Nimrod. They would not be successful in killing Nimrod, who had killed so many mutants and had also worked to oppress the humans as well. They would only manage to retrieve the information on how and when the Nimrod came to be, allowing them to succeed, hopefully, in Moira's 10th life, where she and mutant kind had failed in her 9th. However, we also know that that didn't really work out because Nimrod does exist in her 10th life, so basically are the mutants kinda screwed? I think maybe they are.
In a 10, Psylocke. During the follow-up to the original Contest of Champions story, a seemingly peaceful group of aliens invited the heroes to battle each other and showcase their abilities, with the reward being new tech for all of Earth. In reality though, this was the plan all by the Brood to drain the powers of Earth's greatest champions and then pump them into Rogue, who at the time was carrying the Brood's queen's consciousness. In this competition though, Iron Man was put up against Psylocke. Luckily, Iron Man had built some dampeners into his suit in an effort to limit psychic attacks. However, Psylocke was still able to create the illusion that she was Lady Mandarin once more, and she got the upper hand on Tony for a hot minute before eating it and then getting destroyed by the gold titanium alloy man. And at 9, Falcon. Falcon is an excellent flyer, and in Captain America's 3rd MCU title movie he is shown as quite the pro pilot, dodging and being able to keep pace with both Iron Man and War Machine, even breaking away a few times, once with the aid of Hawkeye and Ant-Man. However, when the chips are down and we're on the ground, Iron Man certainly has the upper hand, as he demonstrated in the brief moments when Falcon dodged Vision's beam and caused it to hit Rhodey's arc reactor, causing him to plummet hundreds of feet and screw up his legs. And you know, since they're still the good guys, Falcon goes up to check on Rhodey and see if he's okay, but Tony blasts him and knocks him to the ground with one single blast. I have to be honest, it counts, but it's still funny as hell. I love that scene. And at 8, Brother Voodoo. Jericho returned to his native Port-au-Prince, Haiti after 12 years of education and practice in the United States. His brother Daniel though was dying from the spell of a rival Bokor who claimed he served the evil serpent god Damballa. After only a few weeks, Jericho had reached a proficiency in voodoo even greater than his brothers though. To further increase his power, Papa Jambo performed a rite that summoned Daniel Drum's spirit back from the dead and joined it with Jericho's own. And in the Axis storyline, Brother Voodoo used this power to possess Scarlet Witch, who Iron Man then had to fight off. Brother Voodoo, possessing Wanda along with a good Doctor Doom and Red Skull, worked to reverse the spell that caused Axis, but Iron Man escaped its effects by throwing up a last-minute telepathic shield, protecting himself from its reversal. I think that it's weird, like having a good version of Doctor Doom, though. I mean, Doom is literally in his name, but okay. Iron Man still technically won then. Just saying.
Number 7, Storm. Now granted, this one wasn't really Storm's fault or her intention, but was more something that happened as a result of people preying on Storm's intense claustrophobia, or at least her past claustrophobia, as I think Storm actually managed to move past those fears in recent years and she no longer really is affected by them in the same way. However, at that time, Storm was severely claustrophobic, so when she ended up being encased in a sort of skin-tight chrome casing, she lost it. I mean, I would lose it too if someone put me in a chrome casing. Doesn't sound very comfortable. Storm appeared to threaten the world over with a massive storm while under duress. The X-Men managed to eventually get through to her and calm her down, which was fortunate as her power levels at the time were compared to the Phoenix. That's how scary Storm losing it can be. That's how scary Storm can be in general. Not a hero you want to push past the brink or, you know, piss off. Just respect Storm. I think that's fair. I think we can all respect Storm, yeah? Number 6, The Flash. Again, but the other Flash. You know what I mean. Wally West is known for being one of the most powerful heroes out there as the Flash. Honestly, I have always felt that super speed is right up there with one of the best power sets. I would agree with Amanda on that. He's also known for being one of the best heroes out there when it comes to his capacity for goodness. All around, Wally is just a lovable dude, but that doesn't mean that he is immune to the pressures sometimes inflicted upon our favorite heroes. Wally himself experienced a loss of control control over his speed powers and his emotions during his time at Sanctuary. Basically a safe haven for heroes to go and talk about their feelings. Basically allowing them to do therapy in a safe environment. But it wasn't really open to villains, unfortunately. I thought it was pretty unfortunate anyways. I feel like I should be included, you know, I'm moving towards being a hero, right? Wally's paranoia, mainly caused by the reset of the New 52 continuity as he remembered the previous one, New Earth, resulted in him rifling through the files at the Sanctuary. Now this overloaded his mind with intense emotions and basically resulted in him losing control, killing tons of heroes who were present at the time accidentally. Wally attempted to make things right while initially hiding what he'd done, making Booster Gold and myself, Harley Quinn, seem like the likely suspects. But it wasn't us, we didn't do it. But eventually, Wally would also come clean. And this also all went down in Heroes in Crisis. So many crises. We really love our crises over at DC, don't we? Number 5. Scarlet Witch. Poor Wanda. Like many heroes on our list here, her loss of control wasn't really all her fault. Wanda for years had issues with feeling unworthy of love, leaving her feeling undervalued and resulting in her constantly ending up in questionable romances and doing her best to please everyone around her. So when her so-called friends lashed out when Wanda created her and Vision's children, kinda warping reality to have and keep them, it pushed her past her breaking point. When Wanda had discovered that her children were taken from her, she became unstable and eventually she kinda snapped, resulting in the events of House of M. And even there, once again, she was trying to not just give herself a perfect world, but also give all of her friends, family, and her colleagues theirs too. And even then, it still wasn't enough. Now look, I'm not saying that she was completely justified in her actions, just that it's understandable that all this unresolved trauma resulted in M-Day when you consider how powerful the Scarlet Witch is. Unresolved trauma is a huge problem, especially in comic books. If you have some unresolved trauma, it's definitely gonna mess you up. Number 4. Sentry. Sentry is a hero who is known for being one of the most powerful and yet one of the most unstable around. He basically was losing it from pretty much day one. While Robert Reynolds invented a story where he was a voluntary test subject who was chosen to receive the Golden Sentry Serum, in reality he was a drug addict looking for a fix who stumbled upon it while breaking into a lab one night. At this point he was already struggling mentally, and so when he became the Sentry, he also became the Void, with his heroic persona also suffering from his dissociative identity disorder. It was also implied that Mastermind made this worse or potentially unleashed this whole thing, but the reality is Robert Reynolds had struggled since the beginning, so it's more likely that Mastermind simply made things just even worse when it came to Bob's dissociative identity disorder, his DID. While the Sentry is supposed to be one of the greatest and most powerful heroes ever in Marvel Comics, the Void is supposed to be just the opposite, one of the worst and most deadly villains to have ever existed. Number 3. Superman. In Injustice, Superman completely snapped when he was faced with the fact that he'd killed Lois Lane and their unborn child together. Now this was not his fault, mind you, as he was being manipulated into thinking that Lois was Doomsday, so he lost it. He killed Joker and decided that the world needed a more severe kind of justice. A justice that would not allow any crime to continue, even if it meant taking control of the entire world in order to do so. Which was pretty much what Supes did, along with his own loyal version of the Justice League, of course. This did create a big split amongst those heroes, as some felt Superman was in the right, while others thought taking people's freedoms away, no matter the reason, was never really worth it. And I kinda gotta agree with those other heroes. Number 2. Raven. I mean, Raven has to work constantly to keep herself from losing control of her powers and herself. Raven's emotions can cause her to completely lose control and turn to the dark side, both when it comes to her powers and her own inner self. One of my favorite points to come back to for levels of evilness and losing it for Raven is the Nightwing and Starfire New Titans wedding issue, issue number 100, for those interested in checking that out. Not only does evil Raven crash Dick and Corey's wedding and threaten Starfire, which is already a lot, I gotta admit, but she also sets up just how awful this is going to go right from the start when she arrives and immediately incinerates the priest. Yikes. Talk about an entrance. It's actually impressive to me that after the number of times Raven has turned super duper evil, she still manages to return to the side of heroism time and time again, and find a level of forgiveness from her peers. I mean, I feel like I've done a lot of bad stuff, but I don't know if I have anything on Raven. I know it's not really her fault most times, but she's done a lot of really bad things. Number 1. Phoenix. Jean Grey has lost control on a few occasions, but one of the most memorable is likely when she went from Phoenix to Dark Phoenix. Now, of course, in retrospect, this wasn't really Jean, but more an imprint and kind of adopted version of her used by the Phoenix Force. But still, it was made from Jean and likely represents what Jean would have done in that same position. So we can still kinda call it Jean. Comics are confusing. Phoenix ended up losing herself to the dark side after her interaction with the Hellfire Club. Interactions there caused Phoenix to snap, breaking through any mental barriers that were still holding on in her brain and causing her to give into her dark side as the power overwhelmed her. One of the first actions was to make Mastermind lose his own mind when she allowed him to see just how much power she was dealing with on a psionic level, giving him a little taste of what she experienced and the information that she had instant access to, which overwhelmed him, rendering him catatonic. From there, it only got a lot more crazy, and it would end up with Dark Phoenix destroying a star and the surrounding planets, one of which was inhabited by, well, millions of people.
And at 10, Peter Parker. With Miles having all the powers of Spider-Man with a couple extra to boot, it's bound to be expected that he would eventually surpass his idol/mentor Peter Parker. However, we expected it after some training and a lot of experience. We see this come to pass though in the pages of Spider-Man. Miles and Peter run into each other in costume and they don't know each other's identity. So Pete demands that Miles unmask himself and, state his name. However, they get into a bit of an altercation because of that. And thanks to the help of a few additions Miles made to his suit, including stingers that cause paralysis and electrified webbing, Miles does end up gaining the upper hand and knocking Peter down, which I have to say shouldn't really have been the case. Like, they should have shown us that the more experienced Spider-Man could still win, since experience is the real currency of the world, but nonetheless, it happened, so it goes on the list. And at 9, Deadpool. Deadpool is such a charismatic character that you'd think he'd pair perfectly with the quick-witted, constantly quipping Webhead. However, in one episode of the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon, Peter was introduced to the one and only Wade Wilson, the merc with a red leather-covered mouth. Kinky. The fight quickly turns into Peter and Wade literally slapping each other, so it's safe to say that this is bound to be interesting. However, Deadpool somehow pulls Peter into his mind, turning the fights from a fisticuffs to Deadpool hunting a Spider-Man whale with a harpoon, a la Louis Brinley, and getting trampled with giant animals and verbal puns that caused physical harm. Deadpool is literally a bard using vicious mockery in this scene, and I don't think that anyone can fight me on that point. Straight up, this whole episode is hilarious, and the fact that Deadpool can't say the word kill just makes me think about YouTube censors. So it's relatable too. And at 8, Fantastic Four. In the Amazing Spider-Man issue 1, we get thrown right into the action with a crossover with the Fantastic Four. But not a fantastic crossover, since the group was actually in the midst of fighting Spider-Man. Spidey took on all 4 members at once, webbing them all up in a way that disabled their powers, including basically hog-tying Mr. Fantastic. The thing is, no pun intended, this fight was all Spider-Man's fault. He wanted to join the Fantastic Four, and figured the best way to convince them to let that happen was to infiltrate their base and kick their asses. However, he learns that joining the team won't actually make him any money, so he called them cheap and leaves, which I find utterly hilarious. He hit the Human Torch with a baseball bat made of web, for crying out loud. How is a 5th member supposed to join the Fantastic Four? Wouldn't it be like the Fantastic Five at that point? Or is Ben getting kicked out? He can go be somebody's pet rock, right? And at 7, Magneto. Yes, at the time of the battle of Iron Man and Magneto, Magneto was on the up and up, and as far as I'm aware, currently is. During Avengers vs. X-Men number 2 from 2012, the Avengers engaged the X-Men on their island home Utopia to get their hands on Hope and stop the coming threat of the Phoenix. This issue, among other interwoven ones, showed various Avengers facing off against mutants like Cyclops and Emma Frost, and Magneto and Iron Man going toe-to-toe. Which seems to be absolutely easy cheese given Magneto's control over metal, but Tony knew about this and had a suit composed of carbon fiber tubes, as well as studying magnetism in his free time, because why not? So in a moment of distraction, when Magneto realized what the Phoenix would actually bring power-wise, Tony managed to land a final blow and knock him from the sky. I mean, sure, Magneto had a moment of distraction that allowed Tony to win, but half of the fight is staying mentally in the fight. You fight with your skill and your mind, and Magneto dropped it. And at 6, Iron Man. In the Avengers crossover known as The Crossing, Iron Man beat himself. Yeah, that's not even the crazy part though. The big hook in this storyline is that many years ago, Kang came back in time and basically brainwashed Tony Stark in the early days of the Avengers. You might ask, what? And then you might ask again, seriously, bro, are you serious? And then another question of, if Tony Stark had been under Kang's control for all these years, why didn't Kang use Tony to help him any of the times that the Avengers actually had beaten Kang? And the answer to that is, of course, we have no f***ing idea. And then there was another bad idea that was thrown into the mix. The notion that Kang only turned to Tony after Hank Pym didn't actually fall for his mental tricks, which is why Hank has mental problems. Yeah, until one faithful team member had the genius idea to go back in time to get Tony Stark before Kang had brainwashed him, and then have that Tony fight against the older Tony. Tony actually ends up nearly killing his younger self, but hey, Iron Man won against Iron Man. Even if it was inevitable that an Iron Man would win, it's good enough for this list, damn it. Halfway through into number 5, Daredevil. In the aftermath of the Axis storyline I mentioned earlier, Tony remains swamped and starts using his tech for even more personal gain than before. Yeah, he's not evil exactly, but he's certainly not above getting all of San Francisco addicted to his new gene rewriting extremist app. Daredevil, who recently relocated to the city after being barred from practicing law in New York, doesn't like this for some reason, almost as if he has a conscience. But when he first confronts Tony in his new island mansion, the Armored Adventure just tosses Matt Murdock into the ocean. Just flings him right out the window. They have another fight later on that is an actual fight, but Tony ends up winning yet again. 2 issues later though, Tony actually ends up saving Daredevil from falling off a building, but then traps him in armor and wipes his memory of all the bad things that he's discovered about Tony, so I don't think he did for Matt's sake. And at 4, the Winter Soldier. Tony isn't able to get the upper hand on the Winter Soldier until he's sufficiently filled with rage of personal loss. And I mean, aren't we all? Rage is the fuel that makes the world go round. Which we actually see play out in the same movie as the fight with Falcon. After Tony learned that Bucky was actually the one responsible for his parents' car crash. I mean, I can see both sides of the coin here. Like, yeah, Bucky at the time was being controlled by Hydra, so it wasn't really him who did it, just his meat suit. But on the other hand, I wouldn't care. He killed my mommy. So yeah, I get why he went nuts. And I always find it funny that somehow Bucky always seems to end up losing his arm, at least his metal one, in some way or another. To be fair though, I don't think Tony would have blown off his arm if it wasn't metal. But like, imagine Bucky was faking having the whole metal arm thing the whole time. And it was just like a cool sleeve that he had that was hiding his real arm, and then Tony blew it off. It was like, ah! That'd be funny. I want to see that what if story. I know it would be absolutely horrific animation wise, but come on, please make it happen. Also, I'm pretty sure that they had the Disney Plus series for What If planned before Stan Lee's passing, and that they were going to reveal him as the Watcher, but couldn't, which is sad. I wish that had happened. Getting close to the end, in number 3, Spider-Man. Iron Man and Spider-Man have fought almost as much as they've teamed up, with Civil War being one of the multiple times they did both. While Peter and Tony's connection during the 2005 run of New Avengers initially saw Spidey joining Team Iron Man in the conflict, which actually ended up resulting in Peter unmasking himself on live television, then coming to regret it and having some horrible future comic storylines. The Wall Crawler changes his tune once he learns about Tony's secret prison in the Negative Zone, the moral implications of which makes Peter switch sides, because, you know, he was imprisoning heroes who disagree with superhero registration in a different freaking yeah. Peter wins the first round despite Tony threatening to kill Aunt May and Mary Jane, but when the two meet at Yankee Stadium later on, Spider-Man gets absolutely pummeled. But don't worry, Spider-Man gives as good as he gets in other issues. Go watch the top 10 most powerful superheroes who lost to Spider-Man if you want more info on that. That's right, I'm telling you to go watch another video. But after this one, of course, you're only 2 numbers away. You only got 2 more to go. Stay. Penultimately, in at number 2, Hulk. Thanks to the versatility of Tony's suits and some help from Bruce Banner himself, Iron Man was able to take on the Hulk when Scarlet Witch sent him rampaging across South Africa in Avengers Age of Ultron, calling down Veronica, which I feel like should be a reference to the Archie comics, but I could be very wrong. The suit proved to be everything we could have hoped for as it went shot for shot with Hulk. The best scene from this fight though is when he grabs Hulk's hand and then like traps it and then just jackhammers the other fist into Hulk's face. Oh, I love that. However, this isn't the only time they fought. They also fought in Iron Man number 132 in 1980, when Hulk punched Tony into a semi-truck, tried ripping his suit open underwater while Iron Man was trying to drown him, which I feel like might have been a bit extreme there, Tony. And even ripped off a chunk of the St. Louis Arch to use as a projectile. In the end though, it took Tony loading an insane amount of energy into his armor to deliver the final blow, taking the big green meanie down. After that though, Hulk turned into Banner and then Tony's suit busted, literally falling to the ground around him. Finally, in at number 1, Sentry. Iron Man's fight with Sentry from Siege number 4 in 2010 is one of those he was being controlled by an evil thing tropes, where technically Sentry was the Void at the time, and the Void may technically be a separate entity of purely negative energy, but it often manifests inside Sentry's body and in essence has the same abilities, so it's like Tony beat Sentry. This isn't a list of heroes that Tony fought while they were on the good side, okay? It's a list of the most powerful heroes that Tony has beat, even if they weren't heroes at the time. It's good enough. During the events of Siege, Void served Norman Osborn as part of his Dark Avengers, raining destruction down on Earth and Asgard, which is definitely an issue for the world, cause you know, Earth. While Thor may have been the one to deal the killing blow, though Tony was the one who had weakened Void into a state where he could be killed. So good on you, Tony. You took down basically a god and lived. Pretty impressive if you ask me. Especially because like, didn't Sentry like tear Ares in half or something nuts like that? I remember talking about that. I feel like that was Sentry. I think Sentry tore the Marvel version of Ares in half. Or was that another person? I can't remember. And at 10, The Flash. Now, The Flash has fought alternate versions of himself a lot, and I mean a lot. But I think that the most interesting time was when it was him from an alternate future where Wally West had died. And this future Barry's solution was to come back and kill his past self so the timeline of events that caused Wally to die wouldn't happen. Yeah, I still don't understand it either. However, to gain enough speed, Barry has to kill all of his rogues, including Gorilla Grodd, Mirror Master, and Captain Cold, who he just like sits with as he dies. It's weird. I also don't get how going on a killing spree helps you gain more speed, but whatever, maybe Reverse Flash did it. He eventually does gain enough speed and runs back in time to try to kill himself. But both the present Barry and a future version of Wally West fight off future Barry and future Barry gets killed. But before dying, he's able to mutter Thawne in an attempt to explain that Thawne killed his mother. Yeah, gotta love comics, right? They make so much sense. In at 9, Mecha Vibe. I will admit the Flash TV show has gone in some interesting directions recently. However, the most recent season saw Barry lose basically all of his emotions for a time while trying to build an artificial speed force. But this ended up causing Barry to be very logical but also weirdly impulsive, becoming a form of pseudo-villain for a couple episodes. But when choosing to take only Iris out of the Mirrorverse, the team retaliates and tries to stop him. But in the process, Barry absolutely destroys all of them because he literally can predict where a ball will appear before it's thrown. He just puts his hand up and then there's a ball that will just bounce in random directions that Cisco throws, and then he doesn't move his hand and catches it. Like, what? Gotta love that speed thinking. And you know, it's not like that would have helped against DeVoe or anything. Gotta love when they introduce new abilities that would have really helped previously, huh? Oh, and that damn copyright neutral lightsaber battle in the finale, seriously? That had to be the most ridiculous bull I've ever seen on this show. Like, I thought Godspeed was gonna pull some like sick ass Zeus bull and like start like grab the lightning and like start throwing it, but no, he made a lightning saber. This show, man. And it ate Green Arrow. Okay, so during the Elseworlds crossover event, Flash and Green Arrow swapped their powers. So Oliver Queen became the Flash and Barry Allen became the Green Arrow. Yet even with that, Barry was in essence still his old self until he started having to take on a darker personality in order to be the Green Arrow. Before doing this, however, he did finally get his revenge on Oliver after around 6 years. In the very first crossover, Flash vs. Arrow, we saw Oliver training Barry on how to case an environment. He did so by placing remote control crossbows in a field and told Barry to catch an arrow. After he did, the remote control crossbows shot Barry in the back. Literally. Barry, however, got his revenge in Elseworlds where he did the same thing to Oliver on Earth 38, when training Oliver on how to use his speed. I don't know how he got the bows there, because like, I mean, it was another Earth, but it still counts. He also beat the Amazo robot after it had gained the abilities of Green Arrow among others, so that certainly counts as well. And at 7, Iron Man. Iron Man and Spider-Man may have a father-stepson-like bond in the MCU, however, things in the comments are much more professional than that, aside from the Iron Spider storyline. I guess. There are multiple instances of Iron Man and Spider-Man fighting and Peter coming out on top, like in Amazing Spider-Man number 536, where he had some assistance from the Venom symbiote and actually exploded the Iron Man suit from the inside out. This was during the Civil War storyline where Tony believed that heroes needed to register their secret identities to be able to continue fighting. After this, however, Spidey does join Iron Man's team and reveals his identity as a result. This then leads to the One More Day storyline that some people believe to be the story No Way Home is inspired by. However, now Spidey takes on Iron Man as Peter Parker, using his organic webbing to string him up real good. There was also the Amazing Spider-Man number 588 fight where Tony shuts down the Iron Spider suit with a voice command, but Peter had built in a counter voice command and surprises Tony, managing to web him up and flee. The counter voice command, I guess, was also surprised. So, that's pretty funny. And at 6, X-Men. This is certainly another interesting number, since Spider-Man had struggled against singular X-Men before, such as Nightcrawler and Wolverine. However, in the Secret Wars storyline, he took on the whole X-Men team at once and won. In Secret Wars number 3, Spider-Man was eavesdropping on the X-Men to learn their plans. When he heard meeting with Magneto among other things, he decided to drop in and say hi. I guess his body and powers just go into overdrive when he fights teams because, just like with the Fantastic Four, Spider-Man was easily able to dodge Wolverine, Nightcrawler, and more, even though he struggled one-on-one. He really wrecked them, webbing Colossus and Nightcrawler, hanging Rogue from the ceiling, and just obliterating the entire team. Even Wolverine pointed out that they were all lucky all he wanted was information and then an escape, because, quote, he really clobbered us. Halfway through into number 5, Captain America. Within the pages of Civil War II, we expected a battle much like the last Civil War, with moral alignments being similar along with a couple deaths. However, we were shocked when a battle between heroes was interrupted. This vision that took us away from the action actually ended with an image of Miles Morales holding a dead Captain America. It seemed to be that Miles had also killed him, with blood dripping out of his hand and covering his suit. Would this really come to pass though? Civil War II was based on the belief in using the visions of an inhuman known as Ulysses to prevent disasters before they occurred, and heroes that felt taking action based on these prophecies were irresponsible, which is where this vision of Miles killing Cap came from, since these visions resulted in preventing multiple tragedies but also got War Machine and Hulk killed. But we did see an explanation play out in Secret Empire number 7, when a rage-filled Spider-Man nearly beat Captain America, who was remade by Hydra using the Cosmic Cube, to death after Cap had killed Black Widow. But that's all in the past. 5 years in the past to be exact. And at 4, Wonder Woman. Despite Marvel and DC always being viewed as rivals, they have had multiple occasions where they've had to come together. One such time was in the Superman and Spider-Man comic, which saw the two heroes join together to take on Doctor Doom. The Hulk and Wonder Woman also made an appearance in an attempt to satisfy more fans, and so we could hope that Superman and Hulk would dish it out. However, Doctor Doom very briefly got Spider-Man and Wonder Woman to fight because he said the two were enemies. And while Wonder Woman believed him, Spidey is from this universe, so he knows better than to take Doctor Doom at his word. So Diana tried to capture the bug in her net, which in this case is a giant lasso that makes you tell the truth. But Spider-Man ended up gaining the advantage by simply turning off the lights and letting his Spidey sense do the work, after dodging the lasso quite a bit, might I add. Spider-Man ended the fight by simply tapping her on her shoulder and basically saying, "See, I could kick right now, but I'm not. I'm one of the good guys." And that was enough for Diana to stand down, apparently. Getting close to the end in number 3, Hulk. Usually when Spidey fights someone stronger or more powerful than himself, he needs to think on his feet and outsmart them in some way. And you think that would be easy with the Hulk, given that he's just a giant brute with anger issues. But actually, that's not how this one played out at all. In True Believers, Spider-Man vs. the Hulk number 1, Hulk challenged Spider-Man at a horrible time. At least, a horrible time for the Hulk. Since Spider-Man had just acquired a new set of abilities which increased his strength, speed, and gave him the ability to go airborne without webs. Spider-Man at this point was actually stronger than the Hulk, so he was trying to avoid a fact for lack of causing permanent damage. Unaliving him, if you will. But when Hulk started to endanger nearby kids, Spider-Man punched him and literally sent him into space. Since he was outside Earth's atmosphere, Spider-Man realized that he wasn't coming back down and flew up to help him, bringing him back down to Earth where he could breathe and not, freeze to death. It's pretty hardcore. Penultimately, in at number 2, Superboy. Marvel vs. DC is one of the best crossovers when looking at these lists. The fights from that crossover were decided by votes, so with Spider-Man being the most popular character Marvel has ever released, you can be sure that he'd end up winning against Superboy, despite the potentially unrealistic scenario that caused. However, it was explained away pretty easily when Superboy broke a water tower and flooded the roof they were fighting on. All it took after that was a conveniently placed high voltage box and some crashing to end the fight for Superboy. I don't know if Spider-Man was aware of this vulnerability, but either way, it went how it went. It also feels like I should mention that the Spider-Man fighting Superboy was Ben Reilly, the Spider-Man clone who goes on to become the Scarlet Spider. And DC fans don't seem to like it when you bring up this fight, with multiple users on a certain forum telling someone who mentioned it to jump on a bed of nails, which I have to say, I've heard better insults, come on. Finally, in at number 1, Silver Surfer. Sure, Hulk is strong and Superboy is part Kryptonian, but Silver Surfer is literally a cosmic being, a herald of Galactus. This man is nuts. And while yes, the fight with him may not really have been there overall, Spidey still technically came out on top, and that's what matters. In Silver Surfer number 14, the flying second place Emmy had a crossover encounter with Spider-Man while surfing over the city, and cause you know, plot to make characters fight, a misunderstanding ensued. So Spidey immediately attacked the Silver Surfer. Let's be honest, on a good day, Surfer would usually just obliterate Spider-Man no problem, or just like flick him and he'd be fine. But on this occasion, the Surfer was actually already weak from a previous encounter, and on top of that, he just didn't want to fight. The Silver Surfer repeatedly tried to avoid battling Spider-Man and even saved Spidey from falling off a building, but Spider-Man wouldn't let up, knocking the Surfer off his board and taking the fight to him on the rooftops. Silver Surfer finally just got fed up with the violence and then made a decision to retreat, but first had to save a child who had taken his board. I mean, like, come on, you could have at least given the kid a few minutes. Him saving the kid is what finally clued Spider-Man in that the Surfer was a good guy, but technically, Spidey wins by default. He didn't die, so that's a win to me. That's what matters.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Superman. We'll kick off the list with some mind-controlled madness here. We always love those. In part 1 of the Superman Sacrifice storyline, Maxwell Lord had Superman thinking he was fighting Doomsday, but in reality he was fighting his own friend, Diana Prince. Now Superman does seem to do most of the damage here, but only because Diana was strategically using her lasso against him in hopes to cancel out the mind control. She had her wrist broken during this altercation, but eventually she realized the only way to stop Superman was to take out Maxwell Lord instead. But if she had not taken down Maxwell, she for sure would have won against mind-controlled, dare I say, messy Superman. She slashed his throat at one point and was still holding back. What a ride. Number 9, Green Lantern. Hal Jordan is one of the most powerful members of the Justice League. His ring allows him to get a lot done, but how does it hold up against the might of Wonder Woman? In the New 52, the team aren't exactly close yet. They have their arguments, you know, it's realistic. They don't know each other too well, so it makes sense. But in Justice League issue 11, Wonder Woman sets out to take on David Graves. Steve Trevor is there and Diana plans on taking off Graves' head. So Green Lantern steps in with other ideas. He insists that this is a job for the League and not just for her, so she should back down, or at least include them. She says no to both options. So Green Lantern uses his ring to hold her back, and after Diana demands to be let out, he responds with no. So she breaks out of the ring's construct and throws Green Lantern around for a few pages. She actually tries to use her sword on him at one point, believe it or not, but luckily Superman grabbed it mid-swing. That was a close call, Diana, a little too close for comfort. And before we continue with this list, if you want to go ahead and give us a thumbs up, that would be awesome. It really does help us out here on our channel, and then in turn we can bring you all the nerdy goodness and put it back into your eyes. Thank you so much for your support. Now let's get right back to this list. Number 8, Power Girl. In Wonder Woman issue 41, A Murder of Crows Part 2, we see Power Girl and Wonder Woman go toe-to-toe. This nightmare becomes reality when the son of Ares, the Crows, turns superheroes against Wonder Woman, including Power Girl. At the start of the comic, Wonder Woman even acknowledges that this isn't going the way she thought it was. She's getting quite a few hits from Power Girl. Now, it's fun to watch. I mean, Power Girl literally punches Diana so hard that she ends up in Canada, which is amazing. Karens are tough. She's probably the toughest Karen out there. I would say so. But Wonder Woman quickly reminds herself that she too has super speed. She's good, but she's no Amazon.
In its 7 other flashes. When Wally goes berserk and starts killing other speedsters, you know it's gonna be an interesting issue. Yeah, in the Future State storyline we see some flashes including Jay Garrick, Barry Allen, and Max Mercury fighting off various thugs with blasters, swords, and futuristic torpedo grenades. But one of the speedsters gets injured and they have to retreat. They later for some reason get inside each other's dreams and end up in some psychic plane of existence where Wally ends up finding them, somehow. It also seems to be like a version of Wally that's also Black Flash, or like maybe it's Black Flash disguising, I don't know. Either way, this version of Wally absolutely rips through the entire Flash family, feeding on their psychic forms, and honestly, that's enough for me to put it on this list, so just because like I don't want it to happen to me. And at 6, Kid Flash. In season 3 of The Flash, Barry kinda gave up on his responsibilities because he was scared of losing Iris. Like, I get it, the girl you've been pining after for years had finally admitted that she had feelings for you, but then you went and changed the timeline, so losing her would definitely end up sucking. But you don't give all the responsibility of saving her to her little brother, that Godspeed, because you changed the timeline. Damn, season 3 was weird. However, in season 3, episode 12, Barry and Wally have a race to keep Wally's training going. Things seem fairly even until they come to a building that they need to run over. Barry faces through the wall, but since Wally doesn't know how to do that, he has to run over the building. Funny. Wally has to run over a wall. Wall. Either way, Barry ends up winning and Wally complains because he phased. But then Barry responds with the best line of, "What's my name?" Since prior he was mentioning how he was called the fastest man alive. Also, I want to just say that they were betting on this race and Caitlyn bet more on Barry than Iris did. So maybe I should have let Savitar win. Just saying. Halfway through into number 5, Black Lightning. The Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover event was probably the biggest, most influential event the Arrowverse ever had, similar to how Crisis on Infinite Earths in the comics was a really big event, with characters from shows that we didn't even know were in the Arrowverse making an appearance, like Doom Patrol, Teen Titans, and even Ezra Miller's Flash. However, one of the most highly anticipated crossovers was Black Lightning, who made his appearance after being pulled to Earth 1 by Pariah when his Earth was destroyed in part 3 of the 5-part crossover. His first meeting with the heroes was an eventful one though, attacking Vibe, Frost, and the Flash at the Antimatter Cannon, demanding that he be sent home, even though there was no home to be sent home to. After some quick descriptions about what's going on from Pariah and Barry, he calms down. But before he does, he takes a few passes at the Flash, including just throwing lightning at him, which Barry just blocks with some additional lightning. So, pretty sick if you ask me. And 4, Supergirl. Okay, this is the last of the Arrowverse stuff, I promise, okay? He fights a lot of people in the Arrowverse. The Invasion crossover was the first big crossover the Arrowverse had. They had a couple prior to this, but this was the first one where Supergirl was brought into Earth 1, and since the Legends were having their first season, they were also there as well. However, after discovering that Barry had changed the timeline and made a whole new reality that gave Diggle a son, and killed Cisco's brother, the group basically benched Barry when they were going to save the president from aliens. Yeah, bench the guy who can run at the speed of light. That's a great idea. So since Barry was staying, Oliver stayed back with him. But it's actually a good thing that they did because the distress signal turned out to be a trap that everyone went to because, you know, they were trying to save the president. However, they turned against Oliver and Barry because they got brainwashed by Dominators. So in an attempt to get the Dominators out of the others' heads, Barry lured Supergirl to a warehouse where he got her really mad enough to break the connection. He got her mad by showing her how much faster he is and that she couldn't even lay a finger on him. I actually find it funny because it's such a childish thing, but it works so well. Getting close to the end in number 3, Batman. Batman is always depicted as a hero who can beat anyone despite not having any powers, and I get why it's appealing to people, because we all want to feel like we can do anything even though we're not a superhero. But the thing is, this whole Batman is the best thing is a load of bull, okay? Take this single frame from the Price storyline, where Flash puts his fist not even a centimeter away from Batman's face and says, "I could hit you 100 times before you even threw one punch." And he is absolutely right. I love this line. I love Batman being put in his place. Not only that, but as Red Death, Barry was also able to beat Batman after being blasted with positive energy. God, that sounds like the show. Barry was able to take control over his body again as Red Death since Batman was so full of hate and whatnot. Because, you know, Red Death is a combination of Bruce Wayne and Barry when they combined after entering the Speed Force, while Barry was tied to the front of a cosmic treadmill-powered Batmobile. I'm not even kidding. Sounds absolutely ridiculous. Penultimately, in at number 2, Quicksilver. During the Marvel vs. DC crossover comic event, the Flash was pitted against Quicksilver, since he's the Marvel equivalent. However, there are multiple things about these characters that separate them. For instance, Quicksilver's body is always moving quickly, and he has to actually slow himself down in order to talk to people and live like a normal person would, which is why he comes off as short-tempered and easily annoyed, because he's literally slowing down his life for you and can't wait for you to get in the fast lane. However, the Flash and subsequently other DC speedsters only run fast when accessing the Speed Force, so otherwise they're just normal people with high metabolisms. But when pitted against each other, the Flash did understandably come out on top, because while he needs to access the Speed Force to move fast, he's accessing a literal force of nature, so yeah, it makes sense. Finally, in at number 1, Superman. The Flash beat Superman in one of the most iconic moments of all time in comics. The Flash and Superman have faced off on multiple occasions, multiple of which ended in a tie or close to it. But in the panels of Flash Rebirth number 3, we got to see how that was all possible. After all, Barry is accessing a force of nature. When Barry wanted to re-enter the Speed Force after escaping, the Justice League was looking for a way to disconnect Barry from the Speed Force to save his life. But Barry manages to break free and runs off. Superman follows him though, saying that he will find a way to save him and that they can't lose another hero, and that he won't be able to re-enter the Speed Force because he will keep up with him. That they have raced before and Superman even won a couple times. But that's when Barry looks at him super smugly and says, "Those were for charity, Clark." And then boom! The man runs insanely fast and leaves Superman in his dust. I love this moment. It settled the debate once and for all. Who's faster? The Flash, by far. I love it. Best moment in all of comics, okay? Well, I mean, after the introduction of Green Arrow's son, Connor.
At number 10 is Toyman. Toyman, an unexpected powerhouse to the DC universe, stands as a testament to the idea that power isn't solely defined by raw strength. His arsenal of whimsical toys may seem harmless, but they've confounded to some of the mightiest heroes, with some iconic showdowns proving his prowess. In the Justice League animated series, Toyman took on the Man of Steel himself, armed with a giant robot wielding a disintegrating beam. He used it and targeted Batman and Wonder Woman, but it was Superman, the embodiment of strength, who intervened. With unwavering heroism, he sacrificed himself, intercepting the beam that vanquished him instantly, leaving no trace behind. This momentous clash underscores that power that isn't always about brute force. Toyman's genius and unpredictability outwitted Superman, reminding us that even the most potent heroes can fall before unconventional adversaries. At number 9, Wolverine loses to a couple of dudes. Wolverine, the indomitable mutant known for his regenerative powers, faced a stunning defeat at the hands of mere agents. This pivotal loss occurred during his dark past as part of the Weapon X program, aka like his origin story. These agents didn't possess any superhuman strength or extraordinary abilities, but they just wielded advanced technology, including a stun gun. In a dramatic encounter, the agents ambushed Wolverine, shooting him with the stun gun. Though Logan, with his exceptional healing factor, attempted to resist, the electric shock disrupted his powers temporarily, and consequently, he was incapacitated and whisked away into the nefarious laboratory for the notorious adamantium bonding process. This episode serves as a stark reminder that even the most powerful superheroes can fall victim to cunning tactics and advanced weaponry, emphasizing the vulnerability that often accompanies extraordinary abilities in the world of comics. If you're enjoying this video so far, by the way, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. At number 8, the Joker. The Joker's ability to topple superheroes while struggling against Batman is indeed perplexing. It raises questions about the power dynamics within the DC universe. Batman's unbreakable will and intellect have often been weapons against the Crown Prince of Crime, but it seems like the Joker has an eerie knack for unsettling even the Man of Steel. In the Emperor Joker storyline, the Joker's cunning manipulation of reality through Mr. Pitilix's powers leads to Superman's imprisonment in Arkham Asylum, a shocking outcome. And furthermore, the Injustice Saga reveals another sinister chapter where Joker's deception pushes Superman to the brink, resulting in Lois Lane's death and Metropolis's annihilation at Superman's hands. Perhaps it's the unpredictability of chaos embodied by the Joker that makes him a formidable adversary, even for the mighty Superman. The complexities of hero-villain dynamics in the DC universe continue to baffle and intrigue fans.
Number 7, Supergirl. Hell on Earth is a Superman storyline beginning with Superman Volume 3, Issue 13, and as the title suggests, Hellspawn arrives to Earth and kicks Superboy and Superman out of the Fortress of Solitude, so now they need help from the Justice League in stopping him. Hell's idea here is to go back in time and prevent the destruction of Krypton, but in order to do so, our solar system will be blown to smithereens. Nice. Hashtag not so great. Supergirl is on board with Hell's plan to, bring back Krypton, so Wonder Woman knows that she must stop her. Diana reminds her that strength is not simply about force, but rather from studying your opponent and how they fight. She continues to tell Kara that she fights like a child, wasting energy and lashing out. That's a pretty harsh burn. So Diana ties her up then with a lasso and hopes that Supergirl can learn from this. Closely matched in strength and speed, but not experience. Number 6, Batman. On screen we saw Batman and Superman go at it. It was a good time, but we have yet to see Batman fight Wonder Woman, and that's probably for the best. In Wonder Woman, the Hikatia, released in 2002, during this storyline Batman gets on Diana's radar after somebody Wonder Woman was in charge of protecting turns out to be a criminal in Gotham City, so Batman has a few choice words to say. That's his city and he handles the crime around those parts. Diana disagrees, so now we get a heated exchange. Lucky for us, it's pretty epic. Batman throws a batarang and Diana catches it. It's always an entertaining dynamic when two superheroes have different plans. Now the only way for Diana to stop beating down Bruce was for Batman to tell her that she straight up won. He surrenders, which is insane. The cover of the story is actually pretty spoilery. It shows Wonder Woman's foot on Batman's head, which we don't see play out until page 93. But it's still worth the read nonetheless. Check it out. Number 5, Mera. Returning to the Flashpoint universe for a hot minute, where Wonder Woman is now an oppressive queen of the Amazons, the way she rules over them is dark. It's cruel. It's nothing like how we know and love Diana now. So naturally her combat skills share a hint of evil as well. She's one of the two main villains in the 2013 animated film Justice League: The Flashpoint Paradox, and it's here where we see Diana and Aquaman fall for each other out of nowhere. Aquaman's wife, Mera, is of course hurt during this, as she witnessed this affair go down, so she approached Wonder Woman and was like, "Hey man, not so cool what happened there with you and my husband. I don't know, let's talk about it." Wonder Woman responds by taking her head clean off. Her body was then later sent to Aquaman as a gift, and then of course a massive war began. This is incredibly dark, but most things in the Flashpoint universe are. I mean, she kept and wore Mera's crown too, like, come on, really dude? Number 4, Captain Atom. In Injustice Gods Among Us issue 2, Captain Atom is keeping Superman busy. He's holding the god down by using his nuclear energy. And he's actually doing a pretty decent job here, I'm not gonna lie. The Pentagon thinks that Nathaniel can take Superman on, but he's never tried to before until now, because he knows, he follows orders, unlike some other gods. It's a heated exchange, but it comes to an explosive halt once Diana enters the scene. Right before Captain Atom is about to punch Superman's head right off, Wonder Woman uses her sword to slash at his throat. He's standing there afterwards, but everybody knows what's about to happen. He has more power in him than 10 nuclear bombs, and her magic sword just breached the one thing that contains it. So he decides to take Superman with him as he flies off and explodes in space. Number 3, Huntress. Back to the Injustice timeline yet again. Looking into year 3, issue 21, the world is far from bright. Superman is hurt, so Huntress believes that this is the perfect time to take a crack at the son of Krypton. Batwoman is also there, so the two of them perform a well choreographed cranial kick and down he goes. They genuinely have him on their ropes here. It's looking good, but then in comes the bestie Wonder Woman. Not on her watch, oh god. Diana explains how fighting for a lost cause doesn't make you a hero, it just makes you foolish. Huntress responds with, well, we'd rather die fools than belong to a tyrant, and then Diana makes that a reality by cracking her whip around Huntress's neck and giving a mighty tug. She got Gwen Stacy'd by Wonder Woman, guys, that's brutal. She says she didn't mean to, but at that point it's far too late, doesn't matter. Number 2, the Justice League. Perhaps one of the best victories here has to be the time Diana blindfolded herself in order to take on Medusa. Yeah, you heard me. Shut your eyes for this one, folks. This one goes down to Wonder Woman Eyes of the Gorgon, beginning in Wonder Woman Volume 2, issue 206. Diana is challenged to take on Snakehead Sally over here, so at first she blindfolds herself, obviously, but when the blindfold comes off, she needs a new plan, so she improvises and uses one of the snakes from her head that had been severed off, and she uses its venom to blind herself. That's one way of not looking. She takes down Medusa blind. It's actually really impressive, but it only gets better. A couple of issues later, Diana, still blind, begins training with the Justice League. They need to know she's still a formidable member, so like the final scene of Dodgeball, she wraps up her eyes, and so it begins. Plastic Man, The Flash, Black Canary, Martian Manhunter, even Batman comes in at one point, all racing towards her, and she takes them all on. Superman even fires a gun at her, like okay, but she deflects it, no sweat, still blind. How impressive is that? And finally coming in at number 1, the Justice League again. Another one, here you go. Yeah, it's pretty common for superheroes to think about taking down their own teammates. Batman did it in Tower of Babel. He had all these plans just in case anybody on the team went a little psycho. And then in JLA, A League of One, Diana has to face a similar situation. The story begins with a flashback to 1348, where the evil dragon Dracul Carfang has started wiping out villages. Now the only way to destroy said dragon is of course to get to its heart. How soft and lovely. Soldiers reach the dragon's lair, fail at killing it obviously, so then they just blow the entrance apart and seal it in forever until You guessed it, today, present day. So the rules with how to defeat this dragon are complicated because it can only be taken down by members of the Justice League, but in turn, it would take them out in the process. So Diana figures out this wild loophole and takes the team down herself in order to protect them. Yeah, hear me out. She traps Martian Manhunter in a volcano, she throws Aquaman to the fishes, hilariously, he gets eaten by a sea monster, and then she beats up Batman and the Flash. She also steals Green Lantern's ring, which is just rude. She handles Superman as well by sending him away on a fake mission in space, so he's just away, not even involved. And then she handles the dragon with her lasso, almost dying in the process, but you gotta do what you gotta do. Even if that includes throwing your coworker into a sea monster's trout. What can I say? That's teamwork. Teamwork makes the dream work.
Number 10. Darkseid is called. In the Snyder Cut of the DCEU film Justice League, we learn that the heroes don't actually save the day. In the original version of the tale, they kinda lose and are too late to prevent the Mother Box from calling out to Darkseid, who arrives on Earth. The Mother Box explodes, seemingly killing our heroes. However, there is one hope left. While technically in this timeline they lose, Barry Allen, aka The Flash, manages to use his superpowers to race beyond the speed of light, turning back time and giving everyone a second chance. Also showcasing how much of a powerhouse the hero can be and making him one of the most powerful superheroes on the team in this version of the story. So although for a moment they lost, the Flash gives the team a second chance, and this time they do manage to save the day, with Cyborg preventing the Mother Boxes from coming together and reaching out across the cosmos with Superman's help, and Aquaman and Wonder Woman defeating Steppenwolf, who dies while being sent back through the portal to Darkseid on Apocalypse. But that first time around, they all likely died. Number 9. Captain Britain vs. Iska. The Ten of Swords tournament, or the Otherworld tournament, was not what many expected, especially when it came to how poorly our friends over on Krakoa did. I mean, after all, they were supposed to be the heroes in this event, as they faced off against their villainous mutant brethren of Arakko, who were also under the influence of the Amenthi demons led by Annihilation. And it all started with Krakoa's ability to lose hard on that very first battle in this story. I don't know about you, but I was pretty shook after reading that first fight when I was reading this as it was all coming out. The fight went down between Captain Britain, Betsy Braddock, representing Krakoa, and Iska the Unbeaten, a champion of Arakko. The fight lasted 4 pages, and Betsy was swiftly and easily defeated by Iska, with both her sword and herself being shattered into pieces. And friends, before I move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to show some support for us over on another platform, head on over to Facebook where you can give us a like, a follow. We really appreciate it when you do, and we have lots of exclusive content coming your way over there, so yes. Number 8. A League of One. Superheroes don't always lose to supervillains in the comics. In the case of the JLA story A League of One, this time around the League is actually defeated by one of their own, Wonder Woman. However, Wonder Woman doesn't do this to actually cause them harm or kill them, but simply to get them out of the way. This is because the League is facing a dragon, and there's basically a prophecy surrounding that fight that it will cost the band of heroes their lives. Wonder Woman not only manages to defeat the League, even disposing of Superman, who she weakens and then sends on a mission to save the others who she's left in danger, but also does manage to sidestep her doomed fate. Sort of. Wonder Woman was willing to die in the League's place, hoping to spare the rest of the team, but in taking on the dragon by herself, she manages to actually avoid dying. At least dying permanently. She dies momentarily, but is revived by Superman, who arrives just in time to bring her back from the brink of death by giving her life-saving CPR. So she died, but only for a minute.
At number 7 is Lex Luthor. In the sprawling tapestry of superhero rivalries, none have endured quite like the clash between Superman and his arch-nemesis, Lex Luthor. Their epic confrontations have etched themselves into the annals of comic book lore, yet what makes this rivalry truly fascinating are the moments when the mighty Man of Steel faltered against his seemingly lesser opponent. He doesn't have any power, man. One such instance borders on the absurd: Lex Luthor's conquest over cancer. In an astonishing turn of events, Luthor uncovered a cure for this devastating disease. Crafty as ever, he ensnared Superman with a devious trap fueled by kryptonite. In a single fateful exchange, Lex emerged victorious. A bittersweet triumph for sure, but this one showcases the complexity of this age-old rivalry. Sorry Clark, but even a hero as iconic as you can't compete with curing cancer. At number 6, the Ultimates beat Thor. In the vast and intricate tapestry of superhero lore, there exist moments where the seemingly invincible stumble before adversaries who appear on the surface vastly inferior. The second Ultimate storyline plunges us into such conundrum, where the Earth's mightiest heroes, the Avengers, find themselves ensnared in a treacherous web of deception spun by the mischievous Loki. Thor, Thor, the god of thunder, wielding Mjolnir with unwavering might, stands as an emblem of power, and yet in this narrative, he's compelled to engage in a heart-wrenching battle against his comrades, manipulated by Loki's cunning illusions. Thor's innate reluctance to harm his friends proves as his Achilles heel, and when he finally unleashes his divine fury, it's Loki who engineers a twist in reality, rendering Thor powerless. This vulnerability is exploited by the Ultimates, who, with Loki's machinations, capture the godly Avenger. At number 5 is Harley Quinn. Here's a classic tale of the underdog triumphing over the mighty, a narrative that twists but keeps us all on the edge of our seats. Enter Harley Quinn, the clown princess of crime, character more known for her maniac laughter and colorful antics than her superhuman abilities. In a spiraling turn of events, Harley manages to defeat none other than the Man of Steel himself, Superman. This unlikely showdown occurred in a series of comic books where extraterrestrial forces coerced Superman into a boxing match against Harley Quinn. They journeyed to the Fortress of Solitude where Superman's powers were temporarily drained. In a moment of sheer audacity, Harley swung a punch that sent Superman reeling, rendering him unconscious. It's a testament to the unpredictable nature of comic book storytelling where even the mightiest heroes can be humbled by their seemingly inferior adversaries. So as they say in Gotham, how do you like that, Puddin'? At number 4 is Killer Frost. A villain more known for her chilling presence than her formidable powers, managed to pull off an incredible upset when she faced against the Man of Steel himself, Superman. In a grand showdown of Justice League versus the Squad, it seemed like another routine battle for the Justice League. They were dominating until the Enchantress entered the fray, incapacitating Superman with her mystic powers. But here's where it gets interesting. Amanda Waller, the mastermind behind the Squad, gave the order, and Frost absorbed Superman's life force. In that fleeting moment, she transcended her status as a weaker villain, and suddenly, she possessed strength to dispose not just Superman, but the entire Justice League. At number 3 is Dr. Light. In a world of superheroes and supervillains is not always about raw power and brute force, and case in point, Superman the Man of Steel has faced numerous foes, but some of his most astonishing defeats come at the hands of seemingly weaker villains who wielded something even more potent: intelligence. Take Dr. Light, for example. In a mind-bending twist, this villain managed to outwit the invulnerable Superman. See, rather than relying on sheer physical might, Dr. Light used cunning and manipulation. He hypnotized the Man of Steel into a state where he was willing to commit the unthinkable, unaliving himself. But it wasn't just as straightforward as it sounds. To pull off this audacious scheme, Dr. Light cleverly had Superman search for a seemingly innocuous magic wand. Little did Supes know that the seemingly harmless item would become his downfall. Dr. Light, once Superman had given it to him, had used that very wand to end him. That even in the realm of superheroes and villains, brains can often peril over brawn. At number 2, Superman's lead supersuit. Superman is known for his powers and intelligence, but he once fell victim to a rather embarrassing defeat. Lex Luthor, his arch nemesis, took advantage of Superman's apparent lack of facial recognition skills. He disguised himself just with a wig, and somehow the Kryptonian superhero failed to see through the ruse. Superman actually accepted a costume design sold by Luthor in disguise. The suit was encased in lead because Superman can't see through lead. But unbeknownst to the hero, that lead concealed the dreaded kryptonite, his Achilles heel. Luthor planned for the lead to erode away, exposing the kryptonite at just the right moment, weakening Superman when he least expected it. I mean, I don't know how Superman didn't see this coming. I mean, the suit just screamed trap with its bright yellow and purple design, complete with a green box that boldly proclaimed your name. It's a cautionary tale of overlooking the obvious, a lesson even the mightiest heroes can learn from. And at number 1 is Alfred Pennyworth beats up Superman. Yeah, that's right. Alfred Pennyworth, the unassuming butler of Bruce Wayne, often flies under the radar in the superhero realm, yet his unyielding determination and surprising resourcefulness has allowed him to claim a remarkable victory against one of the most iconic superheroes of all time. In the Injustice comic series, Superman, consumed by a ruthless quest for control, infiltrates the Batcave with the intent to incapacitate Superman. And with the Dark Knight left vulnerable and on the brink of defeat, Alfred steps into the ring. Now, Alfred is armed with the strength-enhancing super substance that he got from Lex Luthor, of course, and after consuming which, he wages a relentless assault on the Man of Steel. In a shocking turn of events, Alfred headbutts Superman, breaking the hero's nose, and proceeds to pummel him mercilessly, driving his face into the unforgiving floor. The surprising triumph stands as a testament to Alfred's unwavering dedication to protecting his surrogate family, showcasing that even the mightiest of superheroes can suffer humiliating defeats at the hands of seemingly weaker opponents. So the next time you're pondering the hero-villain dynamic, remember that raw strength isn't the only key to victory. Sometimes it's the unexpected, the cunning, and the strategic like toppled even the mightiest of caped crusaders.
Number 10, Batman. Ooh, one of my favorite heroes out there, especially right now. Despite Batman claiming to always be so in control, even he has his limits. We've seen countless realities and Elseworlds where Batman completely loses control and even becomes some of the most powerful and unstoppable villains we've ever seen in DC's history. And we got a lot of unstoppable villains. But when it comes to Batman, one of the biggest villains I can think of for him is Batman Who Laughs. Batman is a villain who loves to prepare for any potential crisis, but often it is this obsession that ends up being his downfall. And even in the main continuity, there are a few times that Bruce has teetered near the edge of losing it. Also in the Batman Telltale game, granted at least that loss of control, well, it wasn't really his fault. Number 9, Cersei. Cersei is a member of the Eternals, who admittedly have all flown off the handle before at some point. But in Cersei's case, this has happened more than once. Cersei at one point suffered from an eternal illness known as Mad-Wari. Mad-Wari? Mad-Wari? That sounds weird, but I'm just gonna assume I'm saying it right. Which appeared to make her more aggressive, even pushing her to at times kill her opponents. Her change in demeanor was also denoted in the comics via a change in costume. I love a good costume change, with her wearing a bright red number in place of her more common green superhero attire. I mean, I feel like red or green, either way you do it, I love both those colors personally. In order to help cure Cersei, who refused to acknowledge her illness and initially resisted the help of her friends, they decided to place her in Gon Josin with the Black Knight, forging a soul bond between the two, which would go on to basically cause a series of other awkward problems, as Black Knight and Crystal were more in love at the time than Black Knight and Cersei. And later on, there would end up being an alternate version of Dane Whitman, aka Black Knight, hell-bent on killing every version of Cersei across the multiverse. But hey, that's a story for another time. And all you nerds out there, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists like it, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8, The Flash. In the comics, Barry has lost it a few times, usually as a result of Eobard Thawne, Professor Zoom, manipulating him. One of the earliest examples of this in Barry's history was when Thawne attempted to do harm to Barry's fiancée on the day of their wedding. This also happened after Thawne had already killed Iris West, who is Barry's one true love. Fearing for his fiancée Fiona's life and not willing to lose another romantic partner again, can't blame him, after what happened to Iris, Barry shouted, "Not again!" and snapped Thawne's neck. As a result of this excessive use of force, Barry actually ended up losing his fiancée Fiona anyways and was put on trial. It all worked out in the end though, as he managed to escape to the future where Iris was waiting for him. And I know what you're thinking. Wait a minute, I thought you said Iris was dead, so how could she be alive in the future? Well, this is The Flash, so time travel and such, and I don't know, maybe clones, it is comics. Look, it doesn't matter anyways because this happy ending also was interrupted shortly thereafter by Crisis. All of our happy endings got interrupted by Crisis. Woo! Number 7, Death of Green Arrow. Ollie has died a few times, but one of the most iconic deaths of Green Arrow, I would say, comes from the late 80s to 90s series of Green Arrow. Here in issues number 100 to 101, while Oliver Queen was working to infiltrate a team of eco-terrorists, he finds himself tangled up in one of their plots, and is one of the few people who can basically stop a bomb from going off and destroying Metropolis. Well, he can stop it going off in Metropolis, I should say. He can't necessarily stop it from going off, unfortunately. He ends up getting his arm stuck in the detonation chamber and is unable to remove it without the bomb going off. Superman shows up and somehow this ends up being a problem even Superman can't solve. Superman! In the end, Green Arrow chooses to sacrifice himself to protect the people of Metropolis rather than still save the people of Metropolis, but instead just lose his arm instead of, losing his whole life. I mean, okay. I personally just think DC really wanted to kill Oliver Queen for some reason at this point, because I think Superman had some plans prior to Ollie making the bomb go boom that could have, maybe worked. Bomb 1, Queen 0, I guess. Number 6, Death of Thor. You could say the death of Thor is basically inevitable. When it comes to the world of the Norse gods of Asgard, many of their demises are ruled by prophetic fate. Thor is no exception. We learn this in his fight against his uncle, Kull Borson, the Serpent, in Fear Itself. During the Fear Itself event, Kull Borson escapes from his prison and rises again. The condemned and long imprisoned brother of Odin once more rises to power by feeding on the fear of the people of Earth, naming his own champions who are each gifted a hammer. Thor in turn is destined to battle his uncle and in so doing unfortunately die. Despite Odin's protests at his son attempting to save Midgard, Thor does do battle with the Serpent, saving Midgard, aka Earth, but at the cost of his own life. That is, of course, until he's next resurrected, as so often happens with our favorite heroes in comics. Sometimes you just gotta defeat a Demogorgon and then you're back to life. You know how it goes. Man, comics. Number 5. DC vs. Vampires. DC vs. Vampires is another monster mashup of an alternate reality where the heroes of that world are overrun by monsters. In this case, the monsters being, you guessed it, vampires. The losers start, of course, with the very first issue, as the premise for this tale is set up. Okay. Premise. Mary Queen of Blood has been killed, and despite being a villain, she was the only one holding back vampires from all-out war. Andrew Bennett, aka I-Vampire, attempts to hunt her killers down in order to find out what is going on and why, and discovers a plot of vampire kind to take over Earth, not just starting a war, but almost completely eradicating the human race, at least eradicating their powers. The plan involves taking over the planet, subjugating the human population, and keeping them around only to treat them basically like cattle. Andrew ends up getting proof, a vial of one survivor's blood, Lex Luthor, which also seems to be weaponized against vampires. He also then decides to head out to the Justice League to warn them, but in the end he is defeated by an already turned Hal Jordan. Hal's evil again, oh gosh, who would have guessed? And that's just the beginning of the story, so it gets a lot more vampires taking over the world, if you like that jam. I personally like that jam. I'm like, yeah, put me in that jam. I like when vampires take over the world. Let's go. Number 4. Purple Man for President. Purple Man's presidency takes place in an alternate reality of Earth 460, and it's actually his rise to power that also creates another alternate universe, a very famous one, in fact, you could say. The reality of Earth 311, aka the 1602 reality. This is because Purple Man initially is imprisoning and killing all heroes alive who still oppose him. But with Captain America, Kilgrave sees a greater threat there. If he kills Cap, Cap will basically become a martyr to the people. So instead, Purple Man simply removes Cap completely from the playing board, but not in such a way that the populace can't rally around, Cap's defeat or death. Kilgrave sends Rogers back to the year 1599, and thereby accidentally creates a superhero reality set in the past, that of 1602. Number 3. Death Metal. During Death Metal, our heroes lost hardcore. That is before they won, but still, they lost at one point. They are lucky they were permitted to stick around, as that is the only way they were able to come back from such a dark place. Pun intended. Because it's Dark Knights, Death Metal. Get it? I'll just see myself out. During Death Metal, the trinity of Superman, Wonder Woman, and of course Batman ended up going against a Batman Who Laughs and his cohort Persephone. In the end, the first time around anyways, they lost and the world became reshaped temporarily in a darker image. The trinity were split up, with Wonder Woman reluctantly agreeing to join Batman Who Laughs. She didn't really have much of a choice. That's how she actually got her Chainsaw of Truth though, which I love that Chainsaw of Truth, it's so cool. And that's also how, in the end, the trinity was able to survive until a point that they could each get free and then basically rejoin back up with one another. Ultimately, Wonder Woman would sacrifice herself to save the multiverse, banishing the dark multiverse and restarting everything, setting it right again after getting a glimpse into the potential future, which we would know as Future State. But before that happened, it seemed as though the core JLA members would be trapped and defeated forever. It was a pretty hopeless time for a little bit there. Number 2. Time runs out. In some cases, antagonists aren't so much people aiming to defeat heroes, but are instead simply seeming natural occurring disasters which cannot be stopped. Sometimes that's the villain of the story. No matter how hard our heroes try, they just can't beat it. That is essentially how Time Runs Out ends, with Iron Man and Captain America being crushed by the unavoidable doom that is the Incursions. literally crushed. The final incursion smooshed Earth 616 and Earth 1610 together, seemingly ending both universes. However, in the end, Dr. Doom would step up to the plate, accepting the power of Molecule Man and defying the Beyonders by saving the multiverse and creating his own battle world. But before all of that went down, everyone was trying to figure out how to stop these incursions, and ultimately were pretty much failing at doing so. In the end, it came down to infighting between Tony and Steve as everyone else prepared their lifeboats, hoping to preserve at least a few of the best of them. As Steve blamed Tony and the two fought on, the incursions arrived, squishing them and seemingly, at least momentarily, ending everything, but not so much in the end. Number 1. DCeased. If you thought Marvel Zombies was bleak, wait till you head to the DC version of that reality, DCeased. Here, instead of everyone being infected by a traditional zombie virus, it's more comic codified than that. In DCeased, the heroes and villains of the world instead become overtaken by the anti-life equation, which in this case turns them into hyper-violent, seemingly mindless beings driven only by rage. Basically, different versions of zombies. Poor Cyborg even ends up kind of as patient zero in this, spreading said virus to the rest of the population and infecting many beloved heroes the world over.